Good morning. Everybody can hear that nice and clear back in the back corners? Welcome to the Grain Symposium, Atlantic Grains Council 2024. A nice soggy day. Nice to see people turn out in this weather. We're going to start off. I'm Neil Campbell. I'm the chair for the day. And I'm going to turn it over to Roy Culverson, the chair of the Atlantic Grains Council, to give you a few welcoming comments.
Thank you, Neil. Lighting's better here than it was last night, so that's good. As Neil just said, we'd like to welcome you all. It's great to have everyone out for Atlantic Grains Council 2024 Research Days. I would like to acknowledge my executive, Neil Campbell, is vice chair here in PEI. Caitlin Coughlin from Nova Scotia, who is a director at large, and Robert McDonald, who is director at large here from PEI. Our financial man, Peter Scott from New Brunswick, keeps us straight. Also, most importantly, Heather Russell, who keeps us all straight on a daily basis and does a very good job. Last night was a prime example of all the little things that get done that would never get done if I was running it, I can tell you. So anyway, thanks, Heather, for all the extra work you do. I also want to thank the PEI Soil and Crop Improvement Association for their collaboration in making this happen here today. Thank you for joining us today for this conference. We have a great list of professional speakers that will guide us as we continue to make important changes to our land and our farming here in Atlantic Canada. Thank you to our producers. That's what really makes this all worthwhile, to continue to support our checkoff, which has gone very well. And we continue to bring the top of the line research back to the field. Much of what you will hear today was facilitated by the Atlantic Grains Council with industry checkoff dollars and in collaboration with AAFC and PEI, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland Ministers of Agriculture through Sustainable Canadian Agriculture Partnership funding. So I'll hand this back to Neil, and hopefully that everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy. First speaker for the day, the topic is wild oats and water hemp management strategies in Quebec. We welcome Sandra Flores-Melia here this morning to discuss management strategies for herbicide-resistant weeds. She's got a bachelor's degree in agronomy, a master's degree in plant protection, and a doctorate in biology from Laval. She joined CEROM in January of 2018 as a weed scientist researcher for field crops, and has since then developed research projects relating to the detection and integrated management of herbicide-resistant weed species. We'll give everybody a nice welcome to Dr. Sandra.
Thank you, everyone. It's very nice for me to be here, so thank you for the invitation. Finally, I'm really going to speak mostly because of Waterhemp, because right now it's the biggest threat that we have in Canada that is present right now. And I'm going to really make the case up for the Quebec as a case study, and hopefully maybe it will inspire for you to adopt some of these measures. So as they present me right now, yes, I'm a weed management researcher at CEROM, which is a research center in Montreal. We support the MAPAC in different capacities as advisors mainly, and for developing responsible management techniques and adoption for these techniques for the growers in Quebec. I work mostly with management of resistant weeds, but we also work with some invasive species such as Waterhemp. CEROM is a non-profit research center located in Quebec. We do research in most of the aspects in field crop production, which is like plant protection. We have a breeders program from winter wheat, spring wheat, and soybean. We work with all the management techniques such as seeding and fertilization rates. We are developing a new platform for numeric and precision agriculture. And of course, we're also doing some contracting research in some cases. So if you want to know more about us, I really invite you to come visit us our website, because we're doing really exciting programs, not only because I work there, but they're really cool. So a short presentation for today. I'm just going to make a very short introduction of what's integrated with management, and I'm going to just talk most about what's Waterhemp, what is the biology, what is such a threat for Canadian production, how do we manage that one in Quebec and some projects that we have across Canada, and just some conclusions and a period for questions. So most of you know what's integrated with management, which is really like a holistic view of how to manage a field. It starts with knowledge of the pests that we want to control. So the biology, what are the natural enemies, etc. It also includes prevention, of course, scouting to know if it's a problem, establish intervention threshold, etc. We need to have a holistic or diversified intervention, so not only chemical management, but really everything else. And we have to come back and see if the strategies that were implemented were effective or not, and then if we have to come back, what have we learned from that, and all that. And everything really is a cycle. Everything is really together. So now, Waterhemp. Probably you haven't really heard of Waterhemp because you're very fortunate of not having it yet here, and I'm coming as a harbor of doom, because I really want you guys to be prepared. You don't want this in your farms. So common Waterhemp, the common name is Amaranthus tuberculatus, but it's also known by other names, especially in some labels, in some herbicides, is known by other names such as tall Waterhemp or rough root amaranth. The 8-point name, which is like a common and international denomination, is called Amatu. So when you're going to see this in the presentation, Amatu is really common Waterhemp. And it does have some other synonyms. So especially in literature predating 2020, you may find it under other different names, especially in some labels of herbicides, and even sometimes in the United States. But it's all referring to the same plant. Common Waterhemp, it's an annual broadleaf dioecious plant with a C4 photosynthesis type. All of this means it's a plant which has female plants and male plants, and it loves heat. It's very problematic to agriculture because it has a great reproductive capacity. One single female can make up to 1.2 million seeds, and these seeds can stay on the field up to 20 years if they're not really properly managed. So a single plant can cause a lot of problem. It also has a very short period window for management. As I said, these plants love the heat. So in very heat conditions, especially in the summertime, a single plant can grow up to 3 centimeters per day. And most management techniques are not efficacious or properly work after the plant is up to 10 centimeters. So basically, you have 3 days to make management decisions to go to the field. And this is why this is such a big problem to manage these plants. It also germinates during the whole growing season. So one student from Peter Sikema in Ontario, he observed that in Ontario, plants started germinating in late May and didn't stop until the first frost in November. So it really, you have cohorts coming all around the year, especially after a heavy rainfall. So most of the herbicides that you apply very early in the season will only control those cohorts, but later cohorts, especially after July, August, and September, they will come out and the herbicide is no longer present, and these plants will grow and create seeds, and I will continue in this population. So this is why it's very, very important. And also, if you see in this last picture in here, plants are able to grow under the canopy, especially in corn, and these plants will stay very short, but they were able to produce some seed. So this is why it's also very problematic. Speaking of herbicides, just for you to know, in Quebec, we do have some restrictions for the use of atrazine, which has a residual effect. So in Quebec, we have some problems with some of the tools that we may not have available for use for this problem. What are the economics and environmental impacts of having Waterhemp in your fields? It's because it really increases the production cost because of the weed management strategies that you have to adopt to control it. So for example, a grower that is usually maybe just doing like a soybean corn rotation that just relies on glyphosate. Glyphosate is kind of cheap, around $36 per hectare. But when you have Amaranthus tuberculatus or common waterhemp, and you have to adopt two-passage strategies with a pre-plant, pre-seed, followed by a post-plant, those herbicides can go up to $215 per hectare or $128, which means about 6 times more the price of the herbicide-resistant management in soybean and in corn, and over 3.5 times the cost on soybean. So these prices will really mean something for you guys. So this is one of the main issues that we have. Also, in Quebec, at least, we really are trying to be conscious of the environment, and we're trying to reduce the health and environmental impact. So glyphosate is kind of low in those indexes, but all these new strategies are very, very, very high. So we have a problem because for the new plan for Quebec, we're trying to reduce these environmental and health indexes by 40% for 2020 to the 2030 period. So adopting these managements, it kind of goes against these strategies. So some subventions or programs may not be available for the growers that are not complying with these reductions in these indexes. So that's also kind of like a hurdle for the growers. Another threat of the agricultural production is because it can really cause a lot of yield loss, up to 63% in soybean and 74% in corn. So this is an example of a field of soybean field, if you can imagine, that was infested with common waterhemp in Quebec. It was one of the first cases. And I don't know if you can see, but there's not really soybean growing under that. So this is a threat. This is a real case if you don't do anything to manage these herbicides. And also, for this specific species, in the world, there's a lot of resistance to groups, almost all of them, 2, 4, 5, 9, 14, 15, and 27. Especially, so you don't have a lot of tools that are available to manage it. Also, there might be a dilemma between applying or not applying if you have common waterhemp in your field. Why is that? Because at very low infestation, so for example, the first year after the seed comes into your field, it may not be very competitive, especially if you have very little plants. And so you may not see even like a lot of yield loss. So if you don't see yield loss, you may see, well, why do I want to invest 6 times the management to do something that is not causing me any problems? The problem is that, as I say, a single plant can cause up to 1 million seeds. So you don't want that in your field, because maybe the first year one or year 2, you may not see a lot of impact in your field, but starting year 3 and 4, you may find yourself in a field that looks just like this. And this field is going to be very, very hard to control. So this is the dilemma that you have to ask yourself. What do I do, especially in the beginning of the infestation? But you really have to consider the long-term profitability of your farm. So for example, in a research project that we did in Quebec in the last couple of years, we have a untreated control that has very low infestation rates. The gross margin for that field was almost $3,600, so which is quite good. We had a very little low infestation rate of waterhemp, but these little plants did actually cause the increase in the seed bank. But the second best management treatment, which is a pre followed by a post, had a $3,472 of gross margin. And this one actually had almost 99% control of waterhemp. So, yes.
My question was going to be, any comment of the Quebec genetics population this week as far as metachlor?
Yes.
So is port resistance any of that metachlor dual resistance in Canada, in Quebec?
Right now, we don't have metolachlor resistance in Quebec that we know of. It may be we're going to start actually looking for that one.
We do have the wheat here on
Yes.
the island, but the potatoes use quite a bit of
Yes, we do have I'm going to talk about it in a few moments. So the main question here is that maybe you're going to be losing a little bit money if you apply this treatment on the first years. And I know for you guys it's a lot, like $125 difference is a lot of money for you guys. But you have to really think about the long term. Do you want to do nothing and have a lot of money the first year and then don't have more money the second and 3 and 4 and subsequent years? So I really ask you to think about this in the long term, because I know it's a lot to ask, and you are the ones that are living this reality, but I will ask you to consider this for the profitability of your farms in the long term. Waterhemp in Canada right now, as I said, is only seen mostly in Ontario. That's where the first populations were found. Then it started in Quebec, and now we have some in Manitoba that we know of. In Ontario, we have a lot of counties. Some of them with actually up to 5 modes of action, resistant to up to 5 modes of action. So this has been a huge problem, and it's mostly becoming just like a very common occurrence. In Quebec, we actually found the first populations in 2017, and since then, for 2021, there were 43 known populations, and by 2022, we have 76. I don't have access to the latest numbers, but we are really like around 100 populations now for 2023. So we were talking about resistance. So in Quebec, we have resistance to groups 2, 5, 9, 14, and 27 that we know of. Starting in 2024, we're going to start looking for resistance to group 4 and group 15. We do have a lot of multiple resistance up to like 3 groups. We do have some molecular tests that are available for groups, especially 2, 5, 9, 14. Most likely we're going to have another one for 27 for later this year. This test, actually, for everything that's coming amaranth, is free for testing for all the growers in Quebec. We also have the Biosate or the classic test that we are doing, especially for testing for metabolic resistance and group 27. Right now, most of the tests that are being sent to the lab for testing are collected in soybean, just because soybean, it's a very low, small plant, so the Waterhemp is very visible at the end of the season, but actually it's being found in corn, soybean, tomatoes, strawberries, potatoes, it's everywhere. So these are just some of the examples for which we already have resistance in Quebec. If we go for the populations between 2017 and 2022, we'll see that the most common resistance is for 2 groups, groups 2 and 9. But if we actually separate all of these by actual groups, we'll see that 99% of populations are resistant to group 2. So basically, group 2s, we lost them. They don't work anymore. Regarding glyphosate, 75% of the populations are resistant to glyphosate. So we're actually losing it. And actually, if you don't know the profile resistance of the population in your field, we're actually telling people, just assume resistant to group 2 and to group 9. Just don't use it, use something else. Sadly, because we lost the group 9, we were banking of having groups 14 and 27, which were introduced in the market in some ways to become like an alternative to glyphosate, but we have started seeing resistance to group 14 and 27. So those 2 groups, we're starting to losing them too. So it's a big problem because we don't have a lot of options. Group 15, which is the metolachlor, is actually also kind of forbidden in Quebec because of the environmental impact on the soil. So you have to have an actual prescription from an agronomist to use it. So we don't really use metolachlor, but we do we do have some of dicamba, and dicamba was resistance to dicamba was identified in the United States very recently. So we have to make sure we don't have it in Quebec either. So this is the problems that we are facing right now. So now we're talking about the integrated weed management for Waterhemp. Again, we're going to talk about all of these points, starting with knowledge. When Waterhemp was found in Quebec, MAPAC founded 2 big projects in which I was actually leading them. One, to test different methods of controlling Waterhemp other than the use of herbicides. and also to develop molecular tests for groups 5, 14, and 27. So today I'm mainly going to talk about the results for the first project because they're the ones that is more like applicable for you guys in the fields. So we also did a lot of extension and outreach. We published a lot of factual sheets, identification guides. We organized a lot of conferences. We even invited specialists from the United States because they've been dealing with these species for a long time now. We did some short courses, and we have like a video on YouTube for everyone to see. Sadly, most of them are in French, but you can even maybe put on some like sub-captioning, so you can go and watch these videos. I highly encourage. I put all of these, we published this little sheet that has like a recto verso fact sheet with all the links for all these websites for conference, everything. And if you wanna, you can just come look for me at the end of the conference. I'll give you where you can find this on the website because everything is free online. Now, prevention. Prevention is the key, and this is one of the key messages I really want for you guys to take from this conference today, because you don't want this plant to come to your field. So in Quebec, we are suspecting that the plant came from a used combine that was purchased in the United States, that was imported to Quebec, and was not properly cleaned before going to the field. So if you guys are buying used stuff from the United States, we highly, highly, highly recommend for you to buy it. Not only from the United States, but now if you are buying equipment from Quebec or even from Ontario or Manitoba, you have to clean this equipment. It's very, very important. Why is this? Because the seeds are so small, so that combine that comes in and just pass through a field that has already Waterhemp is just becoming a vector to creating these new infestation sites for other sites. And each new site just becomes a vector for another site. So deep cleaning is very important. And in Quebec, we have a little problem because a lot of farmers do not own their own combines or threshers. They contract these activities for an external outside provider, and they are the ones who do not want to clean the machine because it's just not profitable. You waste a lot of time, but they are the ones right now causing a lot of these problems. We've seen them, and sadly, they don't want to talk to us. They don't want to participate in our project. They're just like, I don't know. And it's creating a big problem because now the growers that are with this problem, they are really proactive in a lot of other ways, but they're still dependent of these contractors to do not become a reinfestation vector from their fields. So for you guys, if you have this problem, I highly encourage you to develop some strategies so you can work with the contractors beforehand and prepare them to offer these services. Just see it maybe like a bonus. It's like, look, I'm washing my machine before coming to your field. This is a bonus for you guys. So we just for you know, we did a little project. We actually went and we washed a harvester just to see where all these debris coming from which part of the thresher, where are the seeds coming from. So we actually collected 34 kilograms of just dirt and dust and seeds. We were able, on the first germination cycle, to collect 3,200 seeds that were viable. We actually counted the seeds and identified them. Most of them came from like specific parts of the combine, but just for you guys to know, just cleaning the tires of the combine. That one alone, we collected 5 kilograms of dust and dirt, and almost 1,000 seeds came in from this. So something as simple as just cleaning could be a huge impact for you guys to prevent importing herbicide-resistant weeds that you don't have, and especially Waterhemp seeds. So we do have some videos of how to wash this, like a deep cleaning of the harvester, and also we developed some like fast cleaning or like the short version of the cleaning for this harvester, so you guys know how to do it, and just to kind of like just make conscious of how something as little as this could have a huge impact in your farms. And again, if you have especially contracting services for the combine, just kind of like have track sheet of where does this combine come first. So you can go back and scout those fields first and just make sure that those fields are clean for things that you might not have beforehand in your farm. Now it's the combination of scouting and prevention because the pollen of this water hemp is very small and it actually, some of the resistance to herbicide is transmitted by pollen, and this pollen can actually travel up to 800 meters when it's time of production of the pollen. So another problem that we have is that water hemp actually can hybridize with local pollen, so other pigweeds can be hybridized between them. They can transmit resistance, and that progeny can actually come back and re-hybridize with their own progeny. So you can have a multiple scenario of problems with these pigweeds. Also, the seeds are very, very, very small. So you can see, like, you have almost 3,600 seeds per gram. So you here with the coin, you can see they're very small. They actually they can stick to your skin. So if it's very, very hot and humid and you're sweating and you're passing through the field scouting, those seeds can actually stick to you. So you may actually be the one carrying these seeds from one field to the other. Same thing with the pollen. So we're actually suggesting all our scouters to actually wear boots or even just like a full jumpsuit that they will change after coming back from the field, especially if the water hemp are already in pollen production or in seed production stages. So just to make sure that they are not the ones carrying these seeds or pollen from one field to the other. The scouting, as I said, because of the long phenology of the plant through the years, scouting can go all the way through all the season, and it would really depend on what you want to do. Very early in the season, we are asking for the scouters to go to the field and see are the water hemps starting to emerge. Most of these emergence will start around mid-June because of the weather, because they really love hot conditions. But as again, germination can go all the way to November through the first freezing periods. Flowering will start around July, and again will extend throughout the season. And seed production will start around mid-July. Scouting will serve several purposes. First of all, you want to have a confirmation to the species, because these water hemps are very close related with other pigweed species. You may have some variability in the phenology of the leaf, so there are some molecular tests that are available, at least in Quebec and in Ontario, so you can note very specific, do you have common water hemp? You may have other pigweeds, but you want to know if you actually have water hemp, and you can take advantage of this test to also obtain the profile, the resistance profile of the population in your field. So you can apply this strategy, the appropriate strategy. And because of the molecular tests are very quickly done, you can actually implement that within the strategy very early in the season. If you go back very late in the season, as I said, in soybean fields, you can very easily see the plants, and you can collect seeds if you want to do some bioassays. For example, if you want to test for group 27, for which you don't have the molecular test available yet. Just a word of wisdom, if you have some spring wheat or something that is harvested around August or September, you can still have pigweeds coming up in September, October, and November, so you have to maybe come back and scout and decide if you want to do something to that field late in the season, so you just avoid having some seeds coming back in the fields. If you suspect a plant, even if you're not very sure, just contact your local extension agent, your agronomist. Try to make sure that you go ahead and do something, at least identify and confirm that you have this species in your field. This is very, very important. So scouting really is a very fundamental part of this management. Don't forget to scout around the fields, the edges of the field, because those are the places where we don't spray usually, and they can serve as a reservoir for populations for later for the next season, for example. Canada-wise, we have a working group. It's a community of practice for surveillance of all amaranths. It's sponsored by the Canadian Plant Health Council. We work in a lot of things, but mostly we publish the harmonized surveillance protocol. It's available online in English and in French. And mainly it just tells you how to scout, when to scout. It has some photos so you can do how to identify the pigweeds and the Palmer amaranth. Also where to send samples for testing depending on the province where you live, and also who to contact in your province if you suspect to have one of these amaranths. So I highly encourage you to go visit this one. And we're also publishing many other stuff. So here in PI is Andrew Mackenzie-Gospel, who's the one who's the contact. So you can always go back to Andrew if you have any questions regarding what we're doing in this group. Participating in this group is free, so if you want to, I'm actually the co-chair, so if you want to come and visit our meetings or participate actively in the group, you're more than welcome. Just let me know and I'll include you on the invitation for each month. We just meet once a month, so it's not that much of your time. Some other resources. In Quebec, we have a provincial plan that was developed especially for Waterhemp. They actually pay for the scouters who have around $400 per farm, so the growers can go and scout the whole field and send all the testing for identification to the species and to obtain the herbicide resistance profile. We also have the RAP, which is the Réseau d'Avertissement Phytosanitaire, which is just like a surveillance network. And we have a sub-project which is especially dedicated for common Waterhemp. It actually scouts around 50 fields per year, and we are only scouting the fields that are at high risk. Mostly, for example, the ones that are neighboring already identified field, so we know if their neighbors are having the same problem and we can act accordingly. So now we're going to the big part, which is the diversified intervention. And the second thing that I want you to bring with you today is that for common Waterhemp, you cannot use only herbicides. You really need to do like a holistic approach, because this is a beast with many heads, and you cannot rely only on herbicides because it develops resistance very, 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 very easily. So again, soybean, it's one of the crops that is most affected by common Waterhemp. In Missouri, they found that continuous soybean cultivation is one of the factors of favoring the presence of common Waterhemp. So if you are a soybean producer, you really want to do some crop rotation, especially try to avoid having a field just like this one. So we're really encouraging growers to include competitive crops in the rotation, like wheat, winter wheat, rye, alfalfa. One of the first cases, actually, the grower was invited to put like a meadow with alfalfa because of the continuous cutting of the alfalfa will help just cutting all the common Waterhemp that will come throughout the season. And it was actually very successful. The only thing is that you have to make sure you have a good implantation rate, because if, for example, in the spring, after the winter, there has a lot of mortality because of the winter, you have to come back and plant those patches so you don't offer any space for the common Waterhemp to implant itself. Also, you have to make sure to include some herbicides that have some technologies in it, especially, for example, Liberty Link. Sadly, you do not use a Roundup. This is not a commercial, just because a lot of the Waterhemp is already resistant to glyphosate. So any Roundup technology will not be useful if you already have a population that is resistant to glyphosate. But you also have other technologies that are still available and efficacious. Tillage is it's a big question because we have a lot of no-till systems in Quebec. Just for you know, all the seeds that are buried need more light to germinate. So all the seeds that stays on top of the soil will germinate very easily. And also in the no-till systems have been, the literature shows that you have more seeds that are coming every year, and the period of germination can go up to 4 times more than in the no-till. So, and also because most no-till systems rely on glyphosate, and you have glyphosate-resistant populations, no-till systems are particularly affected by this common Waterhemp. So there's something also you may think about it, and you may have to change, sadly, if you have this weed on your field. Chemical control, there's a lot that has been said. For example, one of the projects that we did in Quebec, we tested 12 different treatments in corn, especially different combinations of pre, pre and post with or without cover crops. The main thing that we found is that most of the chemical controls that did not include or rely necessarily with glyphosate were very efficacious, up to 98.5 average in control, especially with the pre-post and pre-post with atrazine. So those are the ones, but all the other ones, even with the cover crops, were kind of good. We're really looking for a 95, 98, 99% of control, especially because, again, you don't want to have any seeds that come back and cause problems. The cover crops, in the corn, we use raygrass, and it was kind of good. The coverage was not as good. It was from 30 to 72%. It's because the years that we did this study, we have a drought in Quebec. It was very, very hard on the crops, especially for the cover crops. And also, the control in general was not as good. We don't really know if the control was not good because, again, because we have very little rain, the pre-herbicide may not have been activated properly. And also the pre may have some effect on the raygrass as well. So this is one of the things that we need to come back and kind of study again. But in general, the control was between 89 to 96%, which was reasonably good, not as good, but reasonably good. The advantage of the raygrass in corn was that even if during the growing season was not as good, in the fall it actually catch up and it was kind of okay this is one of the plots of the experiment, and this could be an advantage for late emerging common Waterhemp. So we're talking August, September, October. And also in the spring, again, actually the raygrass have a really nice comeback on the spring. So this one is also offering some coverage very early in the season. So the idea is really to cover the soil and do not let the common Waterhemp get in your field. That's the advantage of the cover crops. In soybean, it was not as good. The best treatments offer around 96% of coverage, which was okay, but not as high as we expected. The glyphosate was statistically significant, similar to the weedy control, again, because the population was resistant to glyphosate, for you to show that glyphosate is not efficacious when you have glyphosate-resistant populations. Sadly, the cover crops were very not much present. We used sweet clover, but again, because of the drought, there was just not any clover that really was implanted. We did have a reasonably good percentage of control with the pre plus the cover crop. However, we suspect that this effect was mostly because of the pre-herbicide, not because of the cover crop. And again, for glyphosate resistance, you really don't wanna do this strategy at all. For row spacing and seeding rate, there was a study done by Schultz that tested different combinations of seeding rates, row spacing, and different herbicides. The seeding rate by itself did not have any effect against common Waterhemp. The soybean was better controlled when you have a narrower spacing because there's more competition against Waterhemp. And again, the pre and post combination had 99% of efficacy. So again, you have to go with the pre and post if you want to go the chemical route. In soybean, by Schultz, their conclusion was that the highest level of control could be achieved by spacings of around 15 inches with a pre and post herbicide, which is consistent with other things that we've seen. Now mowing, because this is an example of the soybean. You see the Waterhemp really comes out and it's very evident, especially late in the season once the canopy is closed, so you can see if you have a problem there. And it's very tempting to just come back and just cut all these heads and be done with it. Sadly, as I said, this is a beast with many heads, so you cut one and there's two that come out of it. So these plants will actually, if you don't mow it and really get it out of the soil, those growing points will come up and you will have twice as much flowers, not as much grain, but you will still have some seed that will be produced. We do a lot of hand weeding actually because it was just like a zero tolerance program, and we were influenced by a program in Arkansas that was doing a group of growers that just get together and just started like hand pulling weeds as a community group. But in Quebec, hand weeding can cost from $120 to $263 per hectare, so this is quite expensive, and it will depend on how many people, what's the size of the field that you're going to hand weed, and all of that. And sadly, in Quebec right now, we're living a labor shortage crisis, so it might be hard for us to find who are going to be doing this hand weeding. And also, you do have to do some kind of management waste. And you'll see, why do you want to do this? Well, it's because if you just hand pull the weed and just leave it there, the plants can reroot themselves, they will just come upright and just keep growing. And if you hand weed plants that are already being producing seed, the seeds will become mature and they will be viable. So you really you don't have to just hand weed it, you have to hand weed them and take them out of the field. So this is again a problem. So we did some testing with solarization, so just giving the weeders like plastic bags, just put the things inside, expose them to the sun for at least 8 weeks, mostly just, we were suggesting actually just until the whole year, until the next season, and then you can just throw them to the garbage. But you have to mostly do it before flowering, so just to avoid having mature seeds, because the seeds that were inside the plastic bags actually had a better germination rate, and you do not want that. So you have to be very careful not to break the bags, especially if you have seeds inside. We also tested just pulling the weeds, putting them in a corner in the field, cover them with a plastic batch, and leaving them there for the whole year. This could be very useful, but you just have to make sure that you have a plastic batch underneath, as not to reroot the plants again in the soil. And you have to make sure that there's no seeds around, that you can have like small plants coming up during the season. But this could be another option. And you can also bury them. You have to bury them for at least more than 15 centimeters or more, and you do not have to come and redisturb the soil, so you don't have like uprooting or taking the seeds and the plants back up again. All the testing, all the things that we tested, hand weeding, herbicides, everything, it was very efficacious against plants, the leaves and the stems, but not the seeds. So right now, we don't really have a good method to control seeds, especially any of those things that I just talked about. And if you hand weed, do not use these plants to do compost, because we don't really know what's the effect on composting, and you don't want to just create more problem, especially if you had mature seeds in the field. We also tested hot water weeding. This is a machine that comes from France. It just sprays water, it heats water up to 120 degrees. When it comes out from the nozzle, it's between 80 to 100 degrees. It's just like a hot vapor. And it was actually very efficacious. After 24 hours of treatment, you'll see the plants are very sad looking. They actually were all dead, which was very nice. This is the untreated control, so you'll see very nice plants against these very dead ones. And actually, it was very had efficacy rate with plants up to 10 centimeters in height. For the seeds, not as good. It's really not clear. This machine can only heat up about 1,000 gallons, so it's not really for the huge fields. We still have to test it on like a widespread effect, but we could maybe use it right now for treating the borders of the field, cleaning the equipment, for example, and we do need to validate some of the efficacy against the seeds. We also tested pyro weeding. So we did some examples, but here you can see with the angle that we were using, there were some plants, parts of the plant that were not affected by the heat or the fire. What we saw is that actually these little plants were able to come back. So again, pyro weeding was not really effective, up to only for 0 to 4 leaves, which is very, very early in the season, but it could be one of the options. We do have the provincial plan. So the Quebec government separated a budget for almost $1 million for years to help growers with this problem. So as I showed you, we were paying for the growers to just scout and test the populations. If the population of Waterhemp was confirmed, they could access up to $15,000 in subventions to pay for different things. For example, the agronomist will be paid to scout all the fields on the farm and to elaborate a strategy to be implemented in the farm. And the grower will access money to cover up to 90% of all the strategies, the implementation of these strategies, such as, for example, if you change herbicides, you will pay for the difference for changing to buy these new herbicide strategies. If you want to buy a machine to do mechanical control, to do hand weeding, to do biosecurity, and etc. In the period that was effective, this plan, they will have 74 farms that were participating for the phase 1. 56 had confirmed populations of Waterhemp, and only 50 were actually implemented for phase 2, for around 2,000 hectares in total for the plan. Only $361,000 were actually used for this plan, for about almost $5,000 per farm. Most of the farmers wanted to just implement mostly the hand weeding and the mechanical weeding, some biosecurity methods, because the chemicals with these new strategies with the pre and post were kind of very effective, so there was no really need for more. If you want to have more information, you can just go to the website. It's amarantubercule.ca, which is the name in French of the common Waterhemp, and you can have all the information on who to contact if you want to implement something like that in your province. So just very, very quickly, because I have no more time, you really want to make science-based decisions, and you really want to implement a whole diversity of interventions. We highly encourage to exchange with other experts, because you can do everything right and you can still have Waterhemp. And we really, we don't want to have a lot of taboo, especially the first growers in Quebec. They were ashamed that they were having Waterhemp. They didn't want to talk, and it was very difficult for us to help them because we didn't know who they were. So if it's better for you to get to start talking right now, what can you do to prevent this problem, to make sure that they know it's not your fault, and that there's help and there's something that you can implement. It's very, very important. So I really encourage the local agronomists and all the growers to talk, to make sure that you know that this is a problem, and that there's a lot of information available right now in Canada for you to do this and to do things about this. And just lately, this is not only for the Waterhemp, but for all herbicide-resistant weeds. There is a special component because of this resistance can be transmitted by pollen. So again, you can do everything right and still have herbicide-resistant weeds, and you can still have Waterhemp. But the collective large-scale management is better. There was this study done by Evans in which modeling shows that collective management could delay development of glyphosate-resistant population for up to 20 years. So that's 20 years of more usage of glyphosate. So this is what I'm really encouraging for you to do. And this is not only for PI, but the Maritimes, but really at Canada-wide. And word of caution, Palmer's Amaranth, we don't want it here. We don't have it in Canada yet, but we have to make sure that we don't have it. We have this little pamphlet, it's a little card that was done by the Canadian Plant Health Council. We have some available, so you could just come look at for me or for Heather, and we can give you these cards that we created. So again, common Waterhemp is a threat to Canadian production, but there are successfully techniques that you can implement to control it. We've seen it, farmers in Quebec have controlled it, so it's possible, but just don't be afraid to ask questions. We'll be gladly to help you. And the Quebec provincial plan was very successful in helping Quebec growers to adapt to these new realities, and maybe could be used as a model for you guys, for your own region, and just make sure that we're here for you to help. So thank you for you guys to inviting me for here today. I'll be available today if you have any more questions, and thank you everyone for your time.
So we have a few minutes for questions if anyone wants to ask Sandra about this. We do have a mic over here and a mic over there, so we'll be able to hear your question clearly. And I guess while we're waiting to see, I have a question.
Yes.
Lots of times we import grains and cereals from Quebec to the Maritimes.
Yes.
Is that a way of contamination as well?
But it could be. Right now it's mostly in soybean and corn, not really in wheat. We haven't seen it actually. It could be. the advantage is that it's a very small seed, so if you have a registered seed, it could be a way to avoid or make sure it's clean seed. Yes.
Very good, thanks. Any questions? Well, thanks, Sandra.
Thank you so much.
Give-
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.